Friday, March 24. Further thought. Here is a word picture of a church family who are financially faithful managers of God's business on earth. The stewardship vision for Seventh-day Adventist churches around the world. It's some time in the future, and pastors and local church leaders have been successful at creating a stewardship environment in the church. They have taught, trained, supported, and encouraged the church family in biblical financial management. People are implementing biblical principles in their lives. They are growing in generosity, saving on a regular basis for the unexpected, and moving out from under the bondage of consumer debt. Their lifestyles are marked by moderation, discipline, and contentment. Money has been eliminated as the rival god, and they are growing in their relationship with the Creator God. It's Sabbath morning, and people are arriving for services. In their demeanour is a sense of peace, a lack of anxiety over financial matters, a pervading sense of contentment and gratefulness. Marital conflict over money has been largely eliminated. They enter worship with a sense of anticipation and expectation of God's presence and work among them. The church's ministries are fully funded, and it has a strong outreach. It extends the love of Christ in very tangible ways to those in need. Funds have been made available to provide church facilities that wonderfully support ministry and that are maintained with excellence. The question before us all is, what is God calling us to do with whatever resources He has entrusted to us? And that brings us to our 3 discussion questions for this week. 1. In class, talk about the question of how we are to understand 2 very clear biblical teachings: salvation by faith and a reward according to works. How do we harmonize these 2 concepts? 2. Why does learning to be content with what we have now not mean that we can't seek to better our financial position? That is, why are these ideas not necessarily in conflict? And 3. There is no question that eternity awaits us. What choices do we make now, even little ones, that will help determine where we will spend that eternity? And now it's time for our mission story for this week, read by my niece Sibylla, who, like me, is also a volunteer. Thank you, Sibylla.
Treasure in Old Vessels by John Kakanzi. 13-year-old Precious cried out in frustration as her father led her through the gates of a Seventh-day Adventist boarding school in Uganda. She wanted to study in the stately buildings of the school associated with her family's denomination, not in the modest buildings of Katera Primary School. "It's not the magnificence but the academic excellence that matters, my daughter," father whispered into her ear. He said her preferred school had not performed well academically for the past 3 years. Precious bit her tongue, but her face showed her unhappiness as father enrolled her at the school. When father waved goodbye at the gate, her tears flowed freely. "Why has my beloved dad chosen to imprison me in the name of schooling?" she blurted out. "This is ridiculous." "Hello, come," a smiling woman said in a kind voice. "Let's go to the dormitory and I'll show you where to sleep." Precious sadly followed as the woman carried her mattress and suitcase to the dormitory. That evening her heart sank further when she saw students lining up outside an old building. She wondered what was happening until she saw the students carrying plates of food. She realized that it was the cafeteria. That evening she ate a vegetarian meal for the first time in her life. Later, Precious heard a bell ringing and saw students running joyfully to the campus chapel for evening worship. She decided to return to the dormitory, but the doors were closed. She returned to the chapel and stood on its porch, unsure about what to do. "Come, let's enter the house of the Lord," the same smiling woman said. "It's prayer time. Don't be sad." Precious felt loved, and she entered the chapel. Immediately her sadness vanished inside. She had never heard such beautiful singing. She also marvelled at the orderly and interesting 30-minute worship service that followed the singing. "At least I will enjoy this part of the school," she thought. Father didn't return until the end of the school term. He had feared that Precious would refuse to stay if he came earlier. He was surprised when she announced that she wanted to return to the school. She said she did not want to miss the kind teachers who began every lesson with a prayer and a Bible text, and who offered practical advice whenever she faced challenges. The next term, the school held a week of prayer, and Precious gave her heart to Jesus in baptism. "Surely a school is more than its buildings," she told me, the pastor who led the week of prayer. This quarter's 13th Sabbath offering will assist 6 Adventist schools in the East Central African Division, including in Precious's homeland of Uganda. Thank you for your generous offering.
This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful. And here is a disclaimer. Contents of these lessons are not intended to be financial advice, but is general commentary based on biblical principles. The reader is encouraged to seek competent professional advice which will suit their particular personal situation.